Now, first of all, I do want to say some of the controversy and some of the, I would say, Russell, because you produced that show as well, there is an anger. There's an anger sometimes when Alan talks, but I don't think they're hearing what he is saying. He is not saying, and this is someone who has survived cancer, he is not saying to not take chemotherapy, to not have radiation. He is not saying that. He is talking about another option which for him worked. He's also not saying it works for everybody. But this story of, quite frankly, a triumph, and just, Dave, I got to be honest, if my cancer came back, or I knew someone that was going through it that had, let's say the odds weren't good, let's put it that way.
Right.
Would you, after watching this interview,
100%.
You'd entertain it, right?
100%.
I mean, I don't know how you don't see this or watch this interview and kind of say, look, if it's indeed, let's call it a Hail Mary, then why would you not do it? He was one of the most interesting interviews and one of the most, if not the most watched interview of anything we did in the first year of Raw Mike Richards, the anniversary show, and the now legendary Alan Park.
Anyway, as a person, and I asked her, I said, I need to get more of this because I have to understand this whole medical marijuana thing. Can you get me started? So she gets me started on getting some stuff. And what I did was, this seems like a million years ago. I went on YouTube and I learned how to create cannabis oil because I knew I was in just such a terrible place. So I start doing the cannabis oil. I make it. I'd make it myself on the weekend. On the third day of actually taking this tiny substance, this tiny, tiny amount, because you have to gear up slowly. It's very high power concentration. Rick Simpson oil, it's called. And nobody was selling it. You had to make it yourself. You had to go on YouTube, figure out how to do it. And I start to take this. On the third day, on the fourth day of still taking my morphine and going to work, going to the Air Force, I realized I'm not in pain. Isn't that amazing?
Okay.
So I didn't take it.
Okay, so hold on. So, because there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on.
Okay, so you're taking hydromorphone at this point?
I'm just taking hydromorphone, and that's it.
Which people have to understand, really powerful stuff.
It's
the
great
pills
stuff.
are tiny, and for me, as you're saying for yourself, when it comes to pain, godsend. In fact,
what I liked about it is it doesn't mess with your head. It just pushes the pain away.
That's what I felt.
It puts you back to normal town.
But then you're also, at this time, taking this oil.
Yeah.
And this is something that you're smoking with the oil?
No, this is something that you are. It's an oil. It's a liquid, but you're swallowing it.
Oh, so you just but it's a trace amount. Like it's very small. It's a pinhead of oil.
Pinhead of oil.
Cannabis oil.
Cannabis oil.
And then you're sitting there. You're going in for a read. I
am advocating the use of this. Yeah. So what you do is, if you know how to make tea,
yes, you
do the same thing, but you do it with cannabis instead of with tea. And instead of using water, you use alcohol or what's the other one they use? I don't use that other one. Naphtha.
But you notice at this point, the pain's going away.
Right. So I start taking this stuff, and I realize after the third day, like I'm getting up in the morning to go to Air Force. It's the Thursday morning. I've made it on Sunday. I took it on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And now it's on Thursday morning. I'm taking my pill to get on the train to go down to work, and I realize, wait a minute, hang on. I'm not actually in pain right here. I'm going to hold off. Now, I brought it with me. Let's not kid ourselves. I carried that stuff for a year in case.
Right.
But it went away, and then I started to realize I was able to regain physical actions that I hadn't been able to do before. Okay, so now we're getting closer to the time when this expert guy is going to see me at Mount Sinai to tell me the news.
We're only talking a matter of weeks now. I thought you were talking about, this is the matter of the 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, the 4 or 5 weeks.
In this time, this is what's happened for you.
I'm pounding this oil. So what happens is you do this tiny bit of oil, and after a week, you double it to 2 pinheads. And after about a week or so, then you double that to 4. And so it goes, and you're acclimatizing. So now you're like a guy who can have 6 drinks at a bar and he's okay, versus the guy that never drinks, has 2 beers and he's on his ass.
Right, gotcha.
You're doing the same thing. So now I've slowly acclimatized to this. I go back in for my big meeting.
Yeah.
With the
big pro. Another part of the meeting, or the movie, rather. This is the other part.
This is the other part of the movie. This is the guy, not the Emerge doctor, but this is Mr. Prostate King. And I go in to see him. And he does a reading on me. They do a fresh blood reading to see how you're doing. And now this is the reason when cancer comes up and raises its head, and I would have said the same thing to you before your surgery. I would have said, I'm not saying don't get your surgery. I don't say don't do anything to anybody. I'm saying try this along for the ride. Because what happened was, when I tested, have you ever had a PSA score? for your prostate?
But that's not what. But years ago.
Okay.
Years ago.
So your PSA needs to be no more than, say, 4 or 5, depending on the person. Maybe 2, 3. If you don't have any, that's fantastic. Probably not going to happen. Mine was at 700 when I was diagnosed.
700.
700 when I was at the Emerge.
And 4 is dangerous.
4 is dangerous. 700's out of control. So now, but I am feeling a little bit better, and I am functioning through this November into December. So I go see this doctor, this expert, in between Christmas and New Year's, to see this guy, to get the news. Like, what's happening? You're the pro. You're the dude that's going to shepherd me through this mess. And he says, I don't understand this, but your PSA was 700 when you were diagnosed, and now it's at 374.
Oh, my God.
Now, 374 is not something to aspire to, listeners at home. This is not a great fun number, I tell you this, but it's almost half of 700. And he is so convinced that there's something wrong. There must have been a failure in the first one couldn't have been as high.
That 50% accuracy
Yeah.
that would be off.
Because his claim was basically, I understand it. It was either it's going to still be 700 or higher, because I will have, 5 weeks has gone by.
Yeah.
How did it get down here? And he can't believe it, but I know that I'm feeling better in general, sort of nominal senses. I'm able to lift my legs again. I'm able to do certain things. I'm able to, and I know this cannabis stuff is working because you take it every day. And then
that was just part of the most watched interview that we had of all the things that we did on this show. It was that, and it started the Green Crush podcast. If you're interested, because things are going on maybe in your life or someone else's, you got to watch the show, which is what we always say.
What? We just become best friends? Yep.